Hello everyone, my name is Juan Collado and today I want to talk about election integrity. Not to relitigate 2020, not to claim an election was stolen, not to divide Americans, but to ask an honest question. How do we restore trust in our elections when nearly half of the country no longer trusts the system? This matters to veterans, it matters to families, it matters to the survivor of a constitutional republic. And recently, the United States Supreme Court made a decision that directly affects this issue. The United States Supreme Court, the highest court in the country, recently ruled that candidates for office now clearly have standing to challenge election rules in court. In simple terms, this means if you are a candidate and you believe election rules governing how votes are counted are unlawful or unconstitutional, courts can no longer easily dismiss your case just by saying you don't have standing. This ruling does not say fraud happened. It does not overturn any election. It does not favor one party. It addresses a procedural issue. Who is allowed to get into court? And that matters because in 2020, many election-related lawsuits never reached any evidence stage. Let's be honest, not all 2020 election cases were dismissed for lack of standing. Some were heard, some were reviewed on the merits, and court ruled that the evidence presented did not meet the legal threshold to overturn result. This is the truth. At the same time, some cases were dismissed before evidence was ever examined because court ruled the plaintiff did not have standing or filed too late. So two things can be true at once. Courts did their job under existing law, and millions of Americans felt serious questions were never fully examined. That loss of confidence is the real problem. Let me address something directly. There is a claim that judges rule against election challenges because they were politically biased. But when we look at the fact, a majority of the federal judges who rejected 2020 election challenges were appointed by Republican presidents. This included judges appointed by Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump. So this was not liberal versus conservatives. It was a judiciary as an institution prioritizing stability, finality, and preventing chaos after certification that may have preserved order, but it did not preserve trust. And that is very important. Trust is earned, and trust was damaged badly in 2020 especially. We now know as fact that the FBI had possession of the Hunter Biden laptop before the 2020 election. They knew it was authentic. They knew it was not Russian disinformation. And yet the public was told it was likely fake. Social media companies were pressured to suppress the story. And 51 intelligence officials signed a letter dismissing it. And after the election, the truth came out. Polls later showed that a significant number of voters say they would have voted differently if they had known the facts. That matters. So when people ask, why don't you trust the DOJ or the Department of Justice or the FBI blindly? The answer is simple. Because they gave Americans a reason not to. That does not mean every investigation is corrupt, but it does mean skepticism is reasonable in a free society. This brings us to voter ID. Only U.S. citizens are allowed to vote in federal elections. But we also know that non-citizens can possess valid government IDs. Legal residents can hold driver's licenses. Even military ID do not prove citizenship. I know this personally. I once held a military ID before I was a citizen when I served in the United States Navy. So here's the question, not an accusation. How do we guarantee that only eligible citizens vote without voter ID? We require ID to fly, buy alcohol, open bank accounts, access government benefits, yet voting, the most sacred civic act, often requires none. That does not make sense to millions of Americans. And yes, there is one major political party that consistently opposes voter ID requirements. That position has consequences. Let's be clear, documented election fraud does exist, though not at levels proven to overturn national elections that we know of. We have seen mail-in ballot fraud in Democratic primaries in Connecticut, so severe that elections were overturned. Individuals caught on camera attempting to organize illegal voting schemes. Verified cases of non-citizens voting. Occasional cases of ballots cast in the names of a deceased individual. And beyond elections, we see massive government fraud. Medicaid fraud in Minnesota. Large-scale fraud cases in California. And here's a fair question. If someone is willing to commit billions in government fraud, is it unreasonable to demand stronger election safeguards, especially when elections are often decided by a few thousand votes in a handful of swing states? Distrust of election is not partisan. Hillary Clinton questioned the 2016 election. Stacey Abrams refused to concede in Georgia. Republicans questioned the 2020 election. This is about confidence, not party. Every American who loves this country should want elections that are easy to vote in and hard to cheat. This is not suppression, that is security. The new Supreme Court decision does something important. It allows candidates to challenge election rules earlier, before Election Day or before certification. That means more transparency, fewer technical dismissal, less reliance on institutions people no longer trust. It does not guarantee outcome, but it restores a path to accountability. This is not about the past, it is about the future. If we want a country where winners are legitimate, losers accept results, and democracy survives, then we must restore trust. That means voter ID, transparent rule, fair access to courts, and honest institutions. Because without trust, democracy doesn't collapse overnight. It erodes slowly. And once it is gone, it is very hard to get back.